Once upon a time, there was a girl named Liz. She met a bluebird and became friends with it. But one day, she lets the bluebird go. That is the story of Liz and the Bluebird. Wait. How could that be called a story? A girl meets a bird and then lets go of it. That happened to my 6-year-old neighbor yesterday. How could such a story, if it even can be called a story, be interesting, let alone become a masterpiece? It's a kid's story. Actually, even a kid's story like the Three Little Pigs is more interesting. You see, what Liz and the Bluebird was doing was much more than telling this simple story. They were taking a closer look and discovering the emotions at play within such a simple story. And the amazing thing is, they turned such a plain, basic story on the surface into a full-blown, profound drama filled with life and complex emotions. This isn't Steins Gate crazy story, not Death Note kind of mind games, no Madoka plot twist, not One Piece deep lore. It's about two friends finding resolution to their relationship. All the emotions Liz felt from the moment she met the bluebird up till the point in time after Liz lets the bluebird go, the curiosity and awe as she stumbled upon the bluebird, the feeling of joy in being around the bluebird, the pain and sadness as she lets the bluebird go, which was not just a simple sadness, but also an emotion mixed with love for the bluebird and the determination to uphold that love. And the most important part, in my opinion, is the portrayal of the entire tension and uneasiness as Liz faces reality and slowly learns that she has to let the bluebird go. To top it all off, the emotions explored were not only for Liz, but also the emotions that the bluebird was feeling. So take the entire emotional roller coaster of Liz and double that. Liz and the Bluebird is seemingly a tragic story, a story about saying goodbye. But after you watch the anime and you witness the emotions at play, you realize that this story is not exactly about saying goodbye to one another. Take a look at the last 15 minutes of the show, the moment where both characters accepted their goodbyes. Sure, it was sad and painful coming to terms that they have to let the Bluebird go, but there were other feelings there as well. The guilt for having kept the bluebird all this time, the feeling of inferiority and envy, the awkwardness of the entire moment, but also their love for one another as they confess their feelings, their love and pain in doing the right thing for their loved one, the relief of resolving everything, and at the end, the joy as after all that tension, their relationship seemed to have become stronger and they grew as individuals. So it's less of a tragedy and more about facing reality. Even still, in other anime, such a story about the drama and conflict between two characters would just be resolved in a single 20-minute episode, but Liz and the Bluebird took an hour and a half to completely materialize this emotional dilemma, which you might think is absurd, but that's actually another reason why Liz and the Bluebird was so special. They took their time and made sure all those various complex emotions and the transitions between those complex emotions were portrayed clearly, thoroughly, in depth, and as realistic and as rational as possible, meaning in a way that makes sense, which is something I respect from the entire Hibike Euphonium series. They always took their time with the drama, oftentimes letting the conflict grow and develop for multiple episodes before resolving them. Hibike Euphonium tends to tease the drama some episodes in advance before actually spending a complete episode or two to tackle that issue. For example, recently in Hibike Euphonium Season 3, the entire drama with Mayu that will be the main focus around the end of the series has already been growing since episode 2, the episode where she was first introduced. The tension with Mayu was always there since that episode, and it kept on blooming throughout the series as the series also presented the other conflicts with the other characters. This kept on going until the end of the series, and even then, it took around 2 to 3 episodes to be fully resolved. The focus on the drama and how they manage and organize them, specifically in portraying the emotions of the characters, is something I really appreciate and like about the entire Hibike Euphonium series, and it is once again shown in Liz and the Blue Bird. Another reason why I love Liz and the Blue Bird, and why I believe that the movie is exceptional, and this reason is also as equally important as the in-depth drama conflict, it is the clarity and fine precision in which the emotions were shown in the film. If you have watched the show, then you would also have noticed that Liz and the Blue Bird primarily employs the use of visuals and audio to convey the emotions. Starting from the beginning, they open the show with a very peculiar background music, and although they might sound weird, it does have more meaning than just to hook the audience's attention early on in the film. The soundtrack sounded in a way joyful and happy, but they are disconnected that they were not truly joyful and happy, at least not completely there yet. It felt like it was leading us to something pleasant, like a precursor to something happy. Like it's anticipating something pleasant, but is itself not exactly a cheerful sound, which, in my opinion, perfectly describes the scene. Mizore is standing there, waiting for something or someone that is seemingly going to bring her a reason to be happy. It's like the suspense in a horror movie, but in this case, a suspense for something positive. And just like that, not even 5 minutes in the film, and we already see the amazing use of the soundtrack to complement the visuals. And to take it more deeply, to portray what the characters were feeling, in this scene, that would be Mizore's emotions. Also really effective was the use of silence. In my opinion, silence is an underrated tool to catch the audience's attention, especially in this day and age with a lot of people having short attention spans, including myself, and we can bear watching anything without some form of overstimulation. The opposite seems to also be pretty effective when done right, as proven in this scene. A relatively quiet scene, a relatively quiet soundtrack, but to be honest, it attracted my attention much more than some other overstimulation videos. I also want to talk about something pretty interesting in the start of the film that might have simply went unnoticed by some people who have watched the film. That something is the sound of the footsteps. They might seem superficial, but they are acting kind of like a metronome in this scene, controlling the tempo and thus controlling the mood of the scene. This goes for any sound that is repeated multiple times. They are a metronome in disguise. But unlike a metronome, they have pitch and texture, or timbre if you want to use the more musical terminology. That means they're not flat. That means they not only build the mood through the tempo, but also through the texture of the sound. In the case of this opening scene, it would be the combination of the slow tempo with the gentler sound of the footsteps. Obviously, heavier steps and a faster walking speed would create a completely different atmosphere, so I do think the footsteps here play a pretty significant role in setting up the mood of the scene. The ambience noise as well, this sound. Look, you might think I'm crazy for this, but this white noise in the background, the sound of wind and whatever, I think it has a nice subtle effect to help create the suspense that I was talking about earlier. And of course, the close-ups and the visual composition as well, I really don't need to talk about it. The different shots of Mizore's body were amazing. That made me sound like a pervert, but you get what I meant. The art style was also very unique in comparison to other anime. At first, I wasn't too fond of the art style after having watched the first two seasons, but it wasn't a problem at all and you do get used to it real quick. Also, you're not the only one who thinks the necks of the characters are abnormally long. I also thought the same when I first watched it, but you do get used to it. There's just something about the style in the opening of the movie that really, you know, I don't know how to express it in words anymore. You've heard basically everything I have to say about it, but the point is, I love how they directed the opening of this movie. And then Nozomi comes in, and the vibes of the soundtrack changed. The slight feeling of anticipation slowly turns into excitement, and as we followed the two of them walking together, the music kept on changing. The feeling of excitement then settled down after Nozomi started talking to Mizore and was finally resolved to a more calmer mood, but it still had that puzzling undertone to it. All of the changes in the music perfectly conveying the changes within Mizore's feelings throughout the entire scene. Mizore was not a particularly expressive character, so it was really clever that the directors decided to use other aspects than the facial expression to portray her emotions. And of course, equally as impressive in making this idea work and be as effective as it was. Saying it was incredible would only be an understatement. Also, somehow I find it adorable how Mizore was following Nozomi and every single thing she does. I just want to point it out because through this film, the two of them became one of my favorite characters in the entire Hibike Euphonium series, and they were just meh characters in season 1 and 2. They kinda only had their big moment in that one episode, so from a pair of meh characters to two of my favorite characters in the whole series is saying something about the movie. I am aware that every single anime out there also uses character gestures, facial expressions, body movement, lighting, composition, background music, sound effects, and every other visual and audio techniques to convey emotions, but it's just so much better here, okay? Like, look, it's Kyoto Animation. Whatever they produce, it's undeniably better than 90% of every anime out there. Other anime do as well use visuals and audio and whatnot, but it's just much more impactful in Liz and the Blue Bird, and the way they utilized them was just amazing. You'll understand when or if you have watched the show. And Liz and the Blue Bird was a relatively quiet show, meaning they do not have as much dialogue as other films of the same length. One reason being, of course, our reserved protagonist. And the dialogues don't even connect to the drama, not until the very end when they were resolving things that they talked about their problems. For the most part, the characters just talk about normal things relating to their daily lives. They don't directly mention their problems to the other characters. It's not the kind of drama that arises from a debate or disagreement. It's a more delicate and fine form of tension. This is because in real life, we also do not talk about our problems directly with whom we have our problems with, especially back then, around our high school adolescent days. If there are some tension between friendships, we usually do not talk about it. It's usually also not a simple like or dislike. It might be our insecurities or their insecurities. We might be scared that they don't like us, maybe a fear of betrayal, maybe we actually don't like the guy but he or she likes us. Maybe we don't like him, but we have a group project or something. Maybe. The point is, there are some things that can cause friendships to become tense and awkward, and usually we do not talk about this directly because we are scared of the outcome. And that is exactly what Liz and the Bluebird is trying to portray.
秘密みたいなものをそーっと覗く感じで丁寧に丁寧に、フィルムに落とし込んだ作品になっております。
And as I've said, what's amazing is how they presented this awkward tension between friends with great clarity and precision that we can relate with what's going on. What was going on was a very delicate and subtle feeling. As I've said, it's not just one kind of emotion. It's not simply like or dislike, love or hate, happy, joy or sadness. This tension is a much more complicated feeling, actually a group of feelings, and it's not exactly easily described or portrayed or depicted. They didn't explicitly mention what the tension was. There was no argument, no explicit cause of conflict or tension. If you think about it, they just showed the characters going about their normal daily lives as they participated in their school band, but they accentuated the feelings of the characters as they go about their lives in a way that the audience can without much effort understand what was going on, including grasping the entire subtleties of the whole conflict. For example, in this scene, in my opinion, this is the scene where Mizore first came to terms with the fact that she is imprisoning Nozomi as Liz imprisoned the Blue Bird. As I have said, they didn't explicitly mention this in any form, but through the visuals, music, and context, the audience is able to understand this. We see Mizore looking at the blowfish in the fish tank, where the blowfish is placed right beside a blurred out Nozomi. This subtly shows Mizore's realization of how Nozomi is entrapped by her, just as the blowfish is trapped in the fishbowl, and also just as a bluebird will be trapped in her cage. And a few minutes after this, we get another close-up with a different facial expression paired with some melancholic music. Something also mention-worthy, the composition of the lighting as well was spot on to build the atmosphere. It's technically just a normal scene of the two girls looking at the other on the other side of the building, a pretty casual event in real life, but they directed this scene to show the emotions at play, including their subtleties. It's not just a feeling of sad, it's also the feelings of her longing to be with Nozomi, her remembering of the joy Nozomi brings her, her realization that she might have to be distant with Nozomi, and a feeling of loneliness after their separation. All of this in a 1-minute scene, which was relatively eventless, but because of what they intended to convey in this scene, I believe it is a very critical moment of the movie. And once again in this scene, another scene. On the surface, they were just having a normal meeting as the club leaders. They were talking about their plans after graduation, and they also talked about going out together to the Agata festival. It's all normal events, but you can tell there was something off about it. You can feel how Nozomi was contemplating something about Mizore, and she was feeling pretty uneasy as shown by the close-up shots. You can tell Mizore's desire to be with Nozomi as she mentioned she wants to enter music school because of her. You can sense Mizore's insecurities towards Nozomi as she said that she is coming to the Agata festival if Nozomi is fine with her coming. You can tell Mizore felt uneasy by some things Nozomi said from her gestures. Without all the exaggerations, this scene is just a normal conversation scene. This is shown by Natsuki's reaction as she is completely unaware of the tension in the room, just like how other people are probably not aware if we are feeling awkward or tense towards somebody. But of course, the movie made sure the audience was able to understand this feeling because that is the beauty about Liz and the Blue Bird. And of course, the scene of the girls playing the third movement, the climax scene, the peak moment after all the emotional buildup. This scene is even more special because the majority of the emotions are conveyed through the music and the instruments. No dialogue whatsoever, just the audio and the visuals expressing the feeling of letting the bluebird go. Nozomi accepts her inferiority to Mizore, and Mizore, from at first being unwilling to end the music piece, now playing with full confidence as a sign of her resolve for her independence. Another interesting thing you might have missed is that at the end, after Mizore and Nozomi talked things out, there was a short scene showing two birds flying together. Up until that point of the movie, they only showed a bird or a silhouette of a bird flying alone. It's a nice symbolism showing the two of them now playing the role of the bluebird, also signifying the two of them having let the bluebird go, meaning having let each other go, allowing one another to fly high, unchained and free. Despite letting each other go and each of them now walking their own paths, however, it did not mean they were parting ways with one another. It was rather the opposite. They are now soaring through the air together. This scene, this symbolism is just a nice extra detail to communicate the message. The production is just so on point and clear in capturing the blend of emotions in each scene. All the different emotions at play, including when a group of emotions were bunched up together, you can just feel them so clearly. The hidden feelings became so transparent. If I were to put it simply, they weren't animating a story, they were animating the emotions in the story. And of course, this occurred not only in the aforementioned scenes, but throughout the entire film in general. Everything that happened in the movie was on the surface normal interactions of high school girls. They were normal, plain, but with the masterful animating production, they showed that behind every single one of those ordinary moments lie some delicate feelings. Liz and the Bluebird unraveled the hidden, subtle feelings in the normal, mundane, day-to-day situations, from something superficial to something much deeper and profound. How a simple story about a girl letting go of a bluebird, when expanded and taken a closer look, becomes something much more complex and filled with life and relates back to our personal experiences. That is how simplicity becomes a masterpiece. To summarize why I loved Liz and the Bluebird, it came down to two things. How Liz and the Bluebird explored the subtle, fine emotions in such a simple and plain situation, and the perfection in the production to present those emotions. And Liz and the Bluebird presented the conflict in not just one medium, not two, but they dived into the emotions in three different ways. To the main story of Mizore and Nozomi, through the allegory of Liz and the Bluebird, and through the performance at the end. All three of them are Liz and the Bluebird. We have the true Liz and the Bluebird, as in the actual story with Liz and the Bluebird. We have the story between Mizore and Nozomi, which reflects the Liz and the Bluebird story. And we have the musical performance, also titled Liz and the Bluebird, which also tells the story of Liz and the Bluebird, placing more focus on the emotions. So it's kind of a 3-in-1, three different Liz and the Bluebirds, but the same message. Because of this, I'm just so left in awe after watching the film. I just kept on wondering how they did that and came to the conclusion that they must have a genius working on the production team. Even amongst other KyoAni works, Liz and the Bluebird is just something else. In my opinion, Liz and the Bluebird is one of the best works that KyoAni has ever produced from a production and direction standpoint. I also believe that Liz and the Bluebird is the best installment of the Hibike Euphonium series, which, about that, yes, it's a standalone film and you can watch it without knowing the series, but in my personal humble opinion, it would be a much better experience to watch the film as part of the series. So the first two seasons and then Liz and the Bluebird, there's that extra context in the first two seasons that just helps with having a better understanding of the film. But anyways, those are just my thoughts on the Liz and the Bluebird movie and how I came to understand and appreciate the film. I know I'm 5 years too late to talk about the film, but I just caught up with the Hibike Euphonium series with the recent release of season 3, so I just recently watched Liz and the Bluebird and I instantly loved the movie. Also why Mizore became one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. But yeah, if you have watched Liz and the Bluebird, let me know your thoughts on the movie. Maybe there were some other things that I missed that you guys found that was also another reason why the film was amazing. Or maybe you guys didn't exactly enjoy and find the film interesting, which I couldn't possibly see why. Still, let me know if you didn't like the movie. But yeah, otherwise, thanks for watching. I appreciate it and don't forget to like and subscribe for more such anime videos.